and welcome back to the final episode of Wuhan Weekly, a podcast that follows the trials and tribulations of 4 Scottish teachers in China. With me today are Ruth Taylor.
Hello.
Tony Ingalls.
Hi.
And Dean McKinnon-Thompson. Excellent. So, as I said at the start, this will be our final podcast with the 4 of us. So we're going to spend this week just talking about, our life in China over the past 2 years, what we enjoyed about it, what we didn't enjoy about it, what our kind of best moments are, and what we wish we could have done with the time that we had. But before we do that, we will go straight into some news segments that have been collected over the past couple of weeks. WWE, the massive wrestling entertainment company, have signed their first Chinese wrestler. What was his name again?
My pronunciation is wrong and my memory is hazy, but it's something along the lines of Bing Wang.
Bing Wang. But anyway, they have their first Chinese wrestling superstar. At the WWE, what they do with their contract is you are also given free language courses. So the massive superstar that is John Cena has been practicing Mandarin, and so he did a welcome speech in Chinese. And it's quite interesting because I like to think that in the West we don't really get to see that many foreigners, like what Chinese people perceive as foreigners, speaking Chinese. I know Mark Zuckerberg did it for his Facebook. They're trying to do a big push of Facebook in China. But apart from that and John Cena, I don't think I've ever really seen another foreigner speak Chinese publicly on TV that hasn't been from China. So it's just really interesting that China's starting to get this kind of exposure in the media.
I was really impressed by that video of John Cena because, without going into a lot of detail about wrestling, because people aren't into it. Some people, crazy people, aren't into it. But
jabronis are not into it.
John Cena is a super polarizing character, and in wrestling, but the guy himself is a super nice, smart guy, from what I know. And it's really cool to me that the little kids that look up to him will see him speaking Mandarin and hopefully be inspired to also learn a language, especially one as important as Mandarin can be in the future. So I thought that was really cool.
And by the looks of the way he was presenting and the words that he was actually using, it sounds like a speech wasn't written for him.
Right.
It's like he's actually had knowledge of the language and he's put it together himself. There's 1 or 2 words that he said. I think he said "mama hoo hoo," and that is very. It's hard to describe. You can't just go into a dictionary and get that because "mama hoo hoo" really means tiger, horse.
Right.
So people don't understand that means okay. So he was using that to describe his Chinese. So that must mean he has some knowledge of how the language works instead of going on I don't know, Google Translate and just typing in a speech.
Yeah, he wasn't reading off an auto cue or even from notes, from what I could tell from the speech. I don't know, I can't speak for Lewis or you guys, but it was way better than my Chinese. So that is super cool.
Yeah.
And what WWE are doing, signing a Chinese wrestler is super, super cynical and they're trying to break into the Chinese market, obviously, the same way that when Manchester United signed Park Ji-sung, they were trying to break into the Korean market. And when Celtic signed Du Wei, they're trying to break into the Chinese market. But to see something like that, I thought was, all I can do is describe it as pretty cool. I thought anyway.
Something else that has been in the news, I actually read this a few weeks ago. We get the China Daily delivered to our office every day. Sometimes I read it. Most of the time it's pretty boring.
Yeah.
But basically, China is now the fattest nation in the world, which to me is really bizarre and strange to think about. But apparently that is the case. So in China, in 2014, China overtook the US to become the world's fattest nation for both men and women. And to me, that's just so bizarre because if you asked anyone which is the fattest nation in the world, China or America, I guarantee everybody would say America.
Yeah, totally. Even just from our sort of view on the street type thing, it doesn't seem like people are overwhelmingly overweight here.
Yeah, they all seem very skinny and supple.
Yeah.
Well, 43.2 million men in China are obese, which accounts for 16.3% of the global total.
Wow.
Which is
Do you think it's because
crazy.
there's so many more Chinese people compared to American people that populations, the scale of everything.
I think some by
means
percentage.
that
It's a ratio thing. That was my original
But
thought.
I think if you're the fattest nation in the world,
it's like a ratio.
you're not. Well, obviously China's going to be the everything in the world, isn't it? 'Cause
Exactly.
there's more people.
Exactly.
They're the most populous nation. But I think in terms of like obesity, they are. I mean, like you can see it at school. A lot of the older generation, most older people aren't obese because of when they grew up and what life was like here, even like 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But now there's McDonald's everywhere. There's Burger King. There's Pizza Hut.
Exactly.
There's so much fast food.
Exactly. It's the same
Some
as
of the kids at school are obese.
Yeah.
I teach kids who are obese.
it's the same in the UK and America. Like even let's say 50 years ago, people were not as fat as they are now because you just have access to all this fast food and like salty foods and sugary foods, and in China that's become a big thing more recently. So it just makes sense that now people are becoming fatter.
I think it's a thing that comes with like city living as well. When people like live in the countryside, you're obviously going to have a much healthier diet than if you live in the city. But more people come to the city now, move to the city to work, live in the city. The cities are getting bigger. There's more convenient fast food options. People will get fatter.
I think it's also got to do with the kind of like work lifestyle here in China. A lot of people will work very long hours. So say like some of the teachers at our school don't get out until like 5. They have to take a bus home that normally takes an hour and a half. By the time they get home, they're knackered. The easiest and quickest thing for them to do could be to go down to McDonald's and get a burger or go to KFC, get some chicken or whatever. So it's like, not only is it there, but it's so easy to do, especially, as you were saying, in a big city like Wuhan.
There's also the element where, like you were saying, a lot of the kids we teach who are in elementary school age, there's actually quite a high proportion per class that are actually overweight, if not obese. They're certainly over what their healthy weight should be. There was presumably, I don't know if this is correct or not, you guys can jump in, is an element of overfeeding because their grandparents remember the famine. And there's so much more wealth, there's so much more income, the income level's increased, and the parents are working so hard that their grandparents spend most of their time with them. There's an element of overfeeding, overindulgence. Now that you've got the money, we're going to spend it on you. Yeah. Grandparents always overindulge anyway. I don't know if there's an element of rising incomes and memories of like famine.
I don't know if I would go as far to call it overeating or overfeeding rather, but I do think that there is like an emphasis upon, meals here and like large amounts of food as well at meals.
Like in the UK, I was talking to somebody at work, at part-time work about this. In the UK, we always talk about the weather when we see one another, like, oh, it's sunny today or it's hot, or like we complain about how cold it is. But in China, when you see somebody, like every single day my co-teachers at school will say, have you eaten breakfast? It's like the thing that you ask. They always ask you. And so Chinese people always ask, have you eaten? Whereas in the UK, we talk about the weather, and here we all talk about food all the time. I think it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
That's true. At the shop, when I go to the local corner shop, at say at lunchtime, they always, have you eaten?
Yeah, he always says.
Was it Mifan or
Chifan? Yeah.
So it's just like it's like they don't have how are you doing. They don't have the weather's miserable today. They have you eaten food,
and that's
and that's just the way it is.
I think an interesting thing about that article is that the tone of it. I think that in the West now, it's opinions have progressed to the point where being fat isn't necessarily as bad a thing anymore. Maybe some people regard it as unhealthy, but there's like a push to like the way people look and being comfortable in your own skin. I feel like that article was still very much like the way it would have been like 10 years ago in the UK, where it's, look at all these fat people. This is so bad. China is really fat. Stop eating because we're fat and we're an embarrassment.
Well, I think the thing is as well, like, there's not an NHS like insurance. It's like it's a personal responsibility to take care of yourself here. So the government,
the only people you're affecting is you and your family. You're not a drain on a national resource if you're a fat fuck here. So
whilst I'd always condemn, say, fat shaming and everything, there is an element where we don't want to ever get to a point where we say to people it's okay to be fat, because it's really not. For themselves or for people around about them, it's a terrible burden on themselves in the long term and the people it affects.
To end this like little news segment on a funny note, well, I thought it was really funny, and they had quotes from parents about childhood obesity or overweight children, And one woman was quoted in the paper saying, "Since my son got addicted to sugary drinks and ice cream 3 years ago, he's gained more than 5 kilograms.
Obviously.
Some of my students must weigh 5 kilos.
Yeah.
Like, they're so small. Also, since my son got addicted to sugary drinks, no.
Sugary drinks, crack cocaine, and hookers. He's gained 5 kilograms.
So one mother just needs to start saying, no, you can't have it.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds to me. One other news story that I'll just touch on very briefly, because we have mentioned it before on the podcast, a couple of podcasts ago, was about the court case in Changsha, which is the capital of the province next door, called Hunan
Yeah.
province, where a Chinese couple who are gay took the local authorities to court to try and get married. Whilst we now have the court case has been chucked out, the fact that it was even first held, I thought, was a big deal. Because that would never have happened before. So that it shows the government here is probably more aware of the different attitudes, which are more open to LGBT related issues amongst younger people here, that there's now you're beginning to see the leeway being granted on these kind of issues, even if it still ended up in the government saying, chucking the case out. The fact that it even went to court was a big deal.
So crucially, like this fact that it's been shut out is not necessarily a backward step, is what you're saying?
Yeah,
like,
it's a step forward.
Yeah.
Because it would never have even been allowed to go to court.
Right, and I think we talked about that in the relationships
Yeah, we were
podcast.
talking about things how, like, I think, it was the relationships one, how China has been dumped on in terms of, like, information and, you know, things that we've been working on in the West, like gay rights and women at work and all that kind of stuff, is still quite new here. So it is good to see that there is, like, some progress finally being made.
So I just wanted to mention that, sort of one step forward, not the ending I personally would have liked to have seen. I'd have liked to have seen them being able to marry, but one step forward anyway. That's how progress is achieved.
I was reading another article that had a comment from Jack Ma. Now, Jack Ma is the owner of Alibaba, which essentially is eBay in China. They also have a payment system which is very similar to PayPal. I think we've talked about it once or twice, called Alipay. Anyway, he was talking about fake products on his website and how obviously it's very important to ensure authenticity of the products that are on Alibaba. But he was talking about fake products, and a lot of the designer labels that we have at home in the West are produced in factories in China. So Jack Ma was talking about the fake products, and he was saying that the quality of these fake products that are coming out of China are almost identical to that of the real products, because they're using the same machinery. They're being made in the same warehouses, just they're made under the cover of darkness, I guess, or whatever they're doing. And yeah, it's the same workers, the same skilled workers that are doing it. So it was just kind of interesting to see someone who basically owns the consumer market in China talking about how fake products are a good thing, when normally it's condemned almost everywhere else.
Definitely, and Jack Ma's a really, like, influential, important guy, like you just said. And, you know, from our experience of illicit counterfeit goods, I think that on the most part we would sort of give like a one thumb up and one, like, wobbly thumb up for the quality of it, because, like, I don't know, like, the things we bought are pretty legit. And I mean, I'm not wealthy enough to buy designer labels, but I can't imagine the difference is that striking.
It's a super socialist concept, isn't it? He is a Chinese dude who owns this big, massive company in China, serving the Chinese public, making, like, designer goods available to the masses, and then being like, well, it's just as good as the capitalist system, just as good as the expensive stuff. Everyone can have the designer goods, everyone can have this. Yeah. I don't know if that's his thinking behind it, but it is very...
If everyone has it, it's no longer a designer good, nor is it fashionable.
Dean McKinnon Thompson, 2016.
Personal viewpoint.
I mean, the way you just described it with what he said, the intention behind it, I didn't think of it like that, but that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what he said appeals hugely to Chinese people.
Right.
Obviously, taking what you said into account, it's also just very interesting. So if these are the same products, right, that are being made, they're made in the same factory, made of the same material, they're essentially the same product, why are they selling for 90% of the cost of the actual price. Like the workers aren't seeing that extra money.
Right.
The people who run the factories aren't seeing that extra money. That's just going straight into, like Gucci or Chanel or whatever's pocket or whatever. Maybe they'll do charity work or whatever. But like, it just seems that there's like, it highlights to me, it highlights the kind of like ride that we're taking along with like buying into these designer labels.
Not that I want to be cynical about what Ma said. It does seem an element of sort of reality check for a moment. He's obviously trying to justify the fact that his Ali system is a mass conveyor belt for illicit goods. So there's an element of self-justification. And I'm not really convinced that most of the counterfeit goods are as good a quality or as reliable as something authentically made. Plus, you don't know who's making it. It could be kids in a factory being forced to work. You have no guarantee about.
But kids in factories make genuine stuff as well.
That's the point of illicit goods. There's no way for consumers to actually know where it comes from, and that's important to know.
If you buy your clothes from H&M, from Gap, from anywhere on the high street, they're all made in factories by children or by people who work in terrible conditions. When that factory collapsed in Bangladesh, it was British-owned companies who were running them and who were paying their workers very little. I don't think Jack Ma and Alibaba are the only people who
taking advantage of the system.
I understand what you're trying to say.
But we're more aware. But we're far more aware, and these companies are held. You're able to hold them accountable if it's a brand that's copyrighted, that they have to justify where their products are made globally. If it's an illegal company with someone in their bike, you don't know a thing about it.
So what about, what about Amazon and eBay? I don't hear the heads of Amazon and eBay coming out and, being this truthful. I kind of appreciate the honesty from this guy, like
considering Amazon like skimp on any single tax that they have.
Exactly, they're extremely dishonest.
And we're able to hold them accountable.
Not really.
With the EU now talking about new taxes to hold them accountable.
And we're saying this on the eve of the referendum.
The
so
eve of Brexit.
So
going back to what we were talking about designer goods. I think there's a difference between high-end designer goods that are faked, like Chanel and like a lot of stuff that's made out of leather and like the intricate detailing on like some clothes or whatever. That's harder to fake.
Oh, right, okay.
That's harder to fake. So like higher end designer stuff is really, really hard to fake. But it depends what you mean by designer. If you mean like Converse or you mean North Face or you mean something like this, like that's not, like Converse aren't expensive to make. The material that goes into them isn't expensive. So if you buy a pair of shoes that are fake Converse or you buy real Converse, I reckon there's not a big difference. But I think if you buy a real premium leather handbag and a fake leather handbag, there is going to be a difference in quality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What if you buy fake Toms?
Fake Toms, you're okay. You just don't get to give a pair of Toms to a needy kid.
Exactly.
Which I learned, by the way, is actually like it's like a complete marketing scam.
Really?
Yeah, because I read. I watched.
This is libel, but okay.
I watched a College Humor video about it, and like the guy was like, Tom's not even his real name. He was like, Tom went to Africa and saw they had no shoes, and he was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a company. And then when you buy a pair of shoes, I give them a pair of shoes. By the way, it costs $1 to make the shoes.
Oh, of course.
It costs $1 to make the other pair of shoes to send to them. So $28 has just been spunked up the wall.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, some reporters went out to Africa and said, right guys, what do you need? They're like, we need water. We need education. We don't need fucking shoes.
Not these shit shoes anyway.
Tom, get your shoes out of my face. Yeah. So like, I mean, you get stuff that is like that.
Yeah.
Like if you like buy like fake stuff, like maybe you don't get the same benefit.
Right.
But like, it's still a marketing scam.
Yeah,
right?
Whether or not the thing that you feel morally reprehensible about doing is actually, a good thing in the first place, I guess. Yeah,
sure.
It needs to be questioned.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll jump on to what we're actually going to be talking about this week. So first of all, I think it would be best to talk about what are we all doing next and how do we feel about that? Who wants to go first?
I'm leaving China after this semester is over in 1 week from this recording time. And I'm going back to the UK. And the reason for that is because I feel that, my time as a teacher here has come to an end, even if my time as an inhabitant of China hasn't necessarily. Like, I really love this place, as you have probably gathered from the 10 other episodes that we've recorded. And my plans for the near future are up in the air at the moment, but I'm looking forward to taking my experience from China and like using it in the best possible way to like go further in my life and career. So that's my next step.
For me, myself and I, I'm going to be leaving as well. This will be the end of 2 years in China for myself. For me, I've enjoyed being here. It's been great, but I myself just feel like I need to move on beyond China. My plan going forward is, minus a short trip across the pond in the USA to welcome in the American Independence Day with some friends, I'm going to go back to the UK, apply for a PGDE to allow me to be a teacher, but all of that would be a year ahead. So I'll probably almost certainly do a third year TEFL teaching somewhere, but it won't be in China. Because I feel if I do a third year, it will sort of cast a darker light over the fun I've had here. I feel like it's the right time to leave China.
I just want to come back and say something that I should have said at the start of what I said. Like, even though I knew that this podcast was going to happen and what we were going to talk about, I'm super unprepared to say that what I just said. And I don't know if people who are going to listen to this can pick up on it, but it's super emotional. I've made some really, really good friends here that I don't want to say goodbye to. And I know I'll see them again in the future, but this thing that's happened here without being super cliche and mushy and just dickhead is going to always be this last 2 years of my life. And Ruth is crying now and I'm going to get upset, but it has really been such an amazing time.
Especially when I came back last year during summer, it was very hard to explain to people what it's like here. First of all, what it's like here. But I think I kind of got the message across. But I cannot describe to people at home what it's like, the kind of connections you make with people here, because you get put in these situations where you're almost lost. Right? Remember the first, we talked about the first days we were here. We had no idea what's going on. So, emotionally, you feel, very vulnerable, and you create these sort of, friendships with people. Again, not to sound like a dickhead, as Tony was saying, but you kind of create these relationships here, which, feel like they're going to be very hard to, say goodbye from. And obviously, since we're all in China at the time, and at some point, people will leave or people will move on, it's almost inevitable that it will happen, but it is very difficult to say goodbye sometimes.
The relationships we form here are from the start necessarily quite deep, because as you were saying, you're forced to depend on each other in quite an extraordinary way.
Yeah.
When you first come out, even now, 2 years on, we still depend on each other to get us out of scrapes or shenanigans that we end up in, just because of, if nothing else, the language barrier. You can't read or communicate. It's incredible.
As for me, I am actually staying in Wuhan. I'm not sure for how long, but there's always kind of a reason to go back home. There's always things that you want to go home and do, even if it is to go back and see your friends, go back and see your family and all that kind of stuff. But I'm currently signed a contract for a Canadian international school. It kind of seems like a big step up from what we've currently been doing. Not saying that what we've currently been doing has been a joke, but it's more akin to what it would be like teaching at home. And that's kind of what, after doing teaching here for 2 years, what I kind of want to move into now. So I want to get some practice at this international school. And like Dean is going to be doing next year, I want to be looking at heading home to complete my master's in teaching in primary school, and then seeing where that opportunity can take me. With that and 3 years of experience in China, I think I'd have I'd be in a very strong position to, travel the world. And that's kind of what I want to do. As for leaving, or as for everybody else leaving, I guess, obviously it's really crushing for me, because everybody that I've met and everybody that I've spent time with is kind of going off and doing their own thing, which is great, obviously. And I'm sure I will meet new people next year, and it'll be great, but it will never be the same as what it has been these last 2 years, because it was my first time being here, my first set of good friends, first set of people that I could rely on in a different country. And that really means something, especially when you're thousands of miles away from home.
Just to add to that thing about, talking about the friends you made here, I think it's really cool that whoever has listened to this podcast in this year. I'm glad that we didn't make this podcast last year. This year has been so much better than our first year. We've made even better friends out with just the four of us. I mean, some really great friends as well. And like I've lived abroad before. I lived in Australia and China, but like, you know, like again, Dina said it, Lewis has said it. You make intense relationships with people from all over the globe when you like do a thing like this. And I know that I have my really great friends to go back and see at home, you know?
Right, yeah.
But at the same time, like, this is just so like of its like time. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Of its time is the wrong phrase, but just like a period of my life that will like forever be like something I remember. Man, I sound like such a dickhead. I hate people that talk like this.
It's okay. It's hard to explain what's happening without sounding like one of those pricks.
After I've cried for the next week, saying goodbye to everyone and my students, we're going to go home. Well, Tony and I are going to Japan for 3 weeks on holiday.
Sweet.
And then I'm going home to go back to university in September to do a master's in international law and sustainable development. Haven't actually told many people this, so maybe this will be a surprise.
This is the coming out.
I was actually just thinking about this, right? So I made a group chat for my family saying, oh, by the way, I've got this like contract at this international school. I'm going to go for it. I don't think I've told many of my friends. I think they just assume that I'm staying out here because I haven't said anything otherwise.
Not a lot of my friends know that I'm going back for good.
Surprise, everyone! We're staying here, coming home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to go home. I miss my friends a lot. I miss my family. I cry all the time, like, about everything. I
Not
really
just
do.
this. This is not important.
But I feel really sad. It's always really hard to say goodbye and to move on, especially when you leave somewhere that you probably... Like, if you go back, it's never going to be the same.
Yeah.
I think that's what's been so hard about... And the past, like, 4 years for me has been so, like... So many big things, like graduating and, like, going on exchange and then coming here and meeting so many people. And it's amazing how big an impact everything has on your life and how much it, like, changes your, like, outlook and perspective. It's been really rewarding. Being here is the hardest thing that I've ever done.
But also, like, the easiest thing you've ever done.
Yeah.
No, I don't, like, I mean, like, you know, you wouldn't have changed it, like, at all.
Well, we'll talk about the worst things that we've done.
Oh, right, okay, of course.
There are some things I would change.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, why don't we talk about the things that we wish we had done differently, or just, like, the places we wish we'd gone that we didn't get a chance to. Obviously, Lewis, you're going to get the chance to do these things, and that makes me supremely jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had fewer emotions so I could be more eloquent on this final podcast.
For me, especially in the first year when we were here, I wish I kind of just got my finger out and got out and did things and, you know, actually tried to actively learn the language.
Yeah,
like
man.
now I'm catching up and it's a fucking ball ache.
Yeah.
Because there's things that I should know how to say and I don't know how to say them yet. So I kind of wish I did that. For me, the travelling part, since I'm staying for an extra year, I'm not too worried about because I'll be able to cover them next year. You know, I want to go see the pandas. I want to go up to Xi'an, and I definitely want to go to Japan. But I think I have plenty of time now to do that. But yeah, I think I just wish that I was more motivated in doing the things that I should be doing, like learning the language. We come out here and we talk about how much free time we're able to get from this kind of career. But you know, when you teach 4 classes of 30 screaming 7-year-olds, you're like so drained of everything that it's very hard to get up and be like, right, let's go see this museum, let's go see this lake, let's go to this city.
Let's go to a Chinese class.
Yeah, let's go learn some Chinese. It's very hard to motivate yourself because you're just drained. And especially in the summer months, like right now, it's like 35 degrees every day.
Yeah, we had to turn the aircon off to this podcast and we are sweating balls right now. Yeah.
Man. And it's
But
just
it's
like,
not even 35, it's 35 feels like 42.
Yeah.
it's like an oven. It's like you're in an oven. So that also drains you. And then when it's in winter, it's so cold. You're like, fuck, I'm staying inside underneath the heater. So, you know, it's very hard, you know, just because of the climate, it's hard to do things.
I wish I'd learned more Chinese. I feel very disappointed in myself because I'm definitely capable. And it's frustrating to me that I was too lazy in the first year and just too, I don't even know what this year. I tried. My Chinese has gotten so much better, but I definitely could have improved more. But aside from that, I don't really feel like I have missed out on doing anything.
Well, I mean, I would echo that thing about, you know, learning Chinese. I feel like when I came back from the summer holiday last year to begin my second year here, that in the first month after being back, my Chinese improved like 100% more than it did in the whole previous year, because, I was trying hard to learn things and to remember things and to practice. So definitely I would also have wished that I did that. And when I go home, I'm going to try and continue learning and it's going to be so much more difficult, just because, one of our friends, Simon, said that, when he went home practicing his Chinese, it was so much harder because, here you're walking down the street, there's Chinese everywhere, At home there's no Chinese anywhere. Like, how am I going to practice remembering the characters and stuff? But I don't really regret anything. I don't regret any decisions. I wish that I'd had the opportunity to go to the far west of China, to Xinjiang province, to Kashgar and Urumqi, but there's a reason to come back.
For my own part, travelling is definitely one of the elements I've most enjoyed, but has also most of my regrets wrapped up in. I haven't seen Xi'an, the Terracotta Warriors, although we've done a fair amount of travelling. I mean, we have used our holidays very effectively. Like you said, exactly, Urumqi in the far west and Muslim China with Kashgar, that would have been great to see. There's the element of that's always a regret, but I'll be in, chances are, Southeast Asia next year. Do it filling in the 10 months before my PGDE starts. I will almost certainly be travelling somewhere anyway. A chance to see, I don't know, Cambodia, which I really want to see. So that'll be awesome. So I'm not done with travelling, but there are reasons, like you say, like Tony said, to come back to China to travel. There's still plenty here that I never got a chance to see. In terms of learning Chinese, I have the worst Chinese out of the four of us. At one point, the first year I just never made the effort. Largely because in Shening it was just so much out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And for the first 3 months or something, I was on my own. There were absolutely no foreigners at all.
It was quite
it was very intimidating.
Yeah.
So I just did my job and then went home to the internet. That was about it. So, and even then, a bunch of foreigners came. We had our own group, and it's just easy to slip into that. And that's happened to me. And then in Wuhan, I'll be honest. At one point, I remember talking to one of my friends here, Molly, and she summed it up for me. When she said, and I am on the same mentality as Molly, when she said, at some point I must have made the conscious choice not to learn it. And I regret that. But that's what I did.
So you've gone with it.
Yeah, and I just went with that. At that point, I made a conscious choice not to learn it. I learned enough to get by, and that was it.
I feel like the mood needs lightened, so I'm going to say this regret I have. I have not, in my entire 2 years in China, taken a shit in a Chinese squat toilet. It is mental.
How have you not managed?
I don't understand.
I don't like public toilets as a rule, but...
You don't like them here, that no one does.
But I have exactly 1 week to rectify.
I think you can manage
rectify that.
We will go for a serious barbecue session. There's this thing that in barbecue called Wuhan, it's like streaky bacon. That loaded with spice has the power to give anyone the shits.
Yeah. So it's like having a colonic.
We will have 50 of those each, and then we will go to Jidalco, is that area in Wuhan, and it has the worst public toilets. I think I might have sent some of my friends a picture of a squat toilet with not one, not two, but about 5 human amounts of fecal matter piled on top of each other. So
like a layer cake.
Yeah, it was like a cake of poo. So we'll go there and you'll do your first squatter in there.
You can't leave China without using a squatty.
I can't wait.
Do you remember when you did it, Lewis, and you took all your clothes off?
I had to. The first day I got here, I had been on the plane and I was like, if I even try with any of my clothes on, it's gonna go everywhere. So I just got completely naked. And what happened? It went everywhere. I didn't know what I was doing. So there you go.
It is hard. I mean, I always have to end up when I'm squatting down, grab my shorts or trousers what I'm wearing and try and pull it further forward in case it comes out on top of it, because you don't know where your asshole is. You're just sort of dangling about.
Well, it's at the same place every single time.
Well, you don't know. I mean, if you're squatting like that, you don't know where it's going to fire out from. So you see shit on the walls in some of these squat toilets. I don't know what people have been eating, but...
Apologies to the listeners.
So,
this graphic content.
Tap on, tap off. Would you miss the barbecues and the food?
Oh, of course.
Of course.
I'll totally miss the burger.
Yeah, we'll miss the...
That eating culture is actually quite nice.
What I sounded, again, this will be the third or fourth time I've sounded like a dickhead on this podcast, but, you know, Chinese food isn't the same back home in the West.
No.
Like, I'm never going to eat proper Chinese food again, as far as I'm concerned, unless I come back to China.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll totally miss it.
Yeah. So there's a restaurant in Glasgow, and it's run by a Wuhanese man, and I think that would be the only place in maybe the UK, Scotland definitely, that you could get authentic Chinese food, even if it is that one dish.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, he makes the traditional Wuhanese breakfast food, reigan mian, hot dry noodles that we talked about before on the food podcast. And yeah, if you want, you can go to the west end of Glasgow and you can get that for 10 times the price.
Also, don't. They're not nice. Get something better.
So we're going to talk about the worst thing and then the best thing that we've done in China.
I honestly think one of the worst things that's happened in China to me was at school last week when they brought the school lunch to outside the classroom and it smelled so bad I genuinely thought one of my grade ones had shat themselves. It smelled so disgusting that I was like, because they're so little. And it was, you know...
It's possible is what you're saying.
It's so possible that they could have shat themselves. And I was like, oh god, I'm not like emotionally equipped to deal with this. But it was just the school lunch. And also last year when one kid threw a desk at another kid, that was pretty bad. I was very much out of my depth there. Smashing my head open was also a low point. I think it's hard to pick one of the best thing that I've done here because it's all been so interesting and breathtaking and really fucking difficult. We've done so much amazing travelling. Like Tony and I have been so lucky in that we've just really been able to see quite a lot of China. We've been to so many amazing places. And last week we went to Chengdu to see the pandas and we saw the giant Buddha at Leshan. And those were by far two of the most amazing things that I've ever seen. Pandas are amazing. It baffles me that they're too lazy to like reproduce. And the Leshan Buddha was just breathtaking. It's so incredible. I can't imagine who like rediscovered that when they did. It's just awesome. Obviously climbing the Great Wall as well.
One best thing, Ruth?
Sorry.
I'm joking.
It's so hard.
How about you, Lewis?
I think probably the worst thing that's ever happened when I've been here is the countless times of being over the age of 20 and soiling myself because of the food.
Agreed.
I mean, it just, like, you're a grown adult, right? You should be able to hold your anus, but no, it just, like, sometimes you have food here and it just doesn't agree with you, and you shit yourself when you're out, you shit yourself in the lift, you go to school, you fart. No, it's not a fart, you shat yourself. So, like, I think that's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
I've not shit myself, and I would own up to it.
Oh, I've shat myself twice, yeah.
I'm so pleased you brought it up, because when I was talking about not having gone in a squat toilet, I was going to say, you know, I've not gone in a squat toilet, but I have shat myself twice. So
yeah, I think that's probably the worst thing. But I mean, it's funny stories to tell people after. I think probably the best thing I ever done so far is I went to Huangshan, and it's this really beautiful mountain in China. And when we got there, it was really, really cloudy, and it was pissing down with rain, and we couldn't get the cable cars up to the top of the mountain. So you get the cable cars like midway to the mountain, and then the Huangshan is made out of like 10 or 15 different mountain peaks, and you walk across all the mountain peaks. It's really beautiful. So we waited in the cable car queue for like 3 hours, and it finally went, and we got up there and we were above the clouds, and it was just like something out of like a fantasy movie or something like that. You were above the clouds and you could see the peaks of all the other mountains around you. It was just probably the most beautiful place I've ever been to. When we went to, you and Aaron went to the Great Wall, that was amazing. Mm-hmm. We had like it was really cold, it was in the winter, but we had the most perfect clear day I think we could have had. It was super cold, so literally no one else was on there apart from me, you, Aaron's girlfriend, and that old Sherpa who was carrying you about the Great Wall. What about you, Tony?
As for the worst thing, it clearly is, Ruth talked about when we went to Chengdu just a week and a half ago, we were in a car crash. I've gone on about it way too much in real life, so I won't go on about it here, but like, it was super scary, and like, I thought I was going to die, like legit, at one point, but we were almost completely fine, bar a few scratches and bruises. But yeah, that was super scary. So that was the worst thing that's happened here. The best thing that's happened, well, I mean, there have been so many amazing things that we've done while we travelled, like going to the Great Wall of China and going to see, like Ruth said, the Buddha at Lashan, going to see the whole of Beijing is just like so amazing. Such an amazing city.
I thought you were going to say the giant hole in the ground at the back of Guangzhou.
Oh my god! I can't believe it isn't my best thing.
Right, okay.
It is now. Yeah.
So there's this place in Wuhan called Guangzhou, and it's like I think we might have
We have definitely talked about
I think
this.
we have
pit.
talked about this.
It's a pit.
So there's like, it's like really, really built up. I think maybe in 3 or 4 years it's going to be a terminal for 3 or 4 of the metro stops in
Right.
Wuhan. So it's going to be crazy. And there's heaps of shopping centres, there's heaps of places to eat. There's this shopping centre which is legit the same size as my village back home.
Right.
It's huge. But the best thing about it is at the very end of this long stretch of streets that have been like created into like Germany, Italy and Spain, there is this huge pit of just nothingness. Just like a massive black hole in the middle of Guangzhou. And that is, it's
And they've
perfect.
got dinosaurs as well beside
They got
it.
about
They've got
dinosaurs as well.
It's
robotic
the most
dinosaurs,
immense-
They've got a pit. They've got shopping.
Yeah.
It's the most immense and unnecessary hole in the ground I've ever seen. But yeah, like apart from that, the best.
I think the thing is that is collectively our best moment.
Exactly.
So it's, we
Yeah.
can't,
Apart from the pit and all the other things I said, one of the greatest things I've done here in China is I feel like it's made me a really good judge of character, and I've made like friends that are people that I actually want to be friends with. It's not people that I've been like forced to be friends with. Like I was forced to like see them and meet them at the start, but like I actually like these people. Like I actually want to be their pal and I want to hang out with them, and like especially Dean and Lewis, because, well, obviously Ruth is my girlfriend, so, you kind of have
You're
to.
a given it.
Like, especially Dean and Lewis, and because we've done so much stuff together. So, this is all being built up to one thing. And the thing is, it didn't happen in China. The best thing I've done in my time in China happened in Vietnam when we went to Halong Bay, because Halong Bay is like, just like beauty unlike I'd ever seen before, and I got to do it with these guys, and that's like the coolest thing.
Yeah.
For my part, one of the worst things that happened in China was actually first year. I remember it was at Lewis's first day at our old school, and Lewis said to me, "Can I sit in one of your classes just to see how it goes?" He sits in my first class of the day. It goes perfectly. These kids are perfect. Nothing goes wrong. It makes me look good. It puts Lewis at ease because he's come to China, the other side of the world, to teach these kids, and there's a language barrier. The third class of the day, his second for sitting in with me, there's a massive fight. Kids are punching each other. The whole class is around in a circle, baying like a mob. I'm losing all semblance of control. And I remember after I broke up the fight, catching Lewis's face, sitting in the back of the class thing, just a look of, oh shit. What have I got myself into? That was one of the worst moments. Also, for me, one of the most hilarious. But it was as stressful as hell at the time. One of the best things, for me, I think it's the best thing. I remember, on the Great Wall, like you said, for me, I'll ditto that. And being carried by the old Sherpa woman from Mongolia. She was lovely. And she got me and my hangover right over that wall, which was fantastic. But we've done so many awesome things. Vietnam was fantastic. I think Hoi An was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Within China, apart from being in Beijing, I thought Hong Kong was great fun. Especially when we went up to the monastery with the massive golden Buddha.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you saw
Lantau.
and you saw the signpost, and it told you how far away London was, New York was, San Francisco, all the major cities in the world on the signpost. And it just, for me, that moment just helped me appreciate how far away from everything I'm familiar with I was.
Yeah.
And it was a functioning monastery. You saw the wee monks going about their business, and it was really just sort of a moment of reflection and sort of concentration from it. It helps just, because it becomes after a while just a bit, you start unappreciating the awesomeness of being out here after a year. It just becomes a bit normal to you. And that hit in Hong Kong when we went. I think it was you guys were there as well. It was the second time. And that brought it home for me. Just helped me reacquaint myself with the sort of, I'm in China.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Well,
I rediscovered that feeling.
the collective worst thing that we've done and experienced in China, and I know Dean will agree with this the most strongly of all of us, is Guangzhou.
I thought it was okay.
We talked about
before.
Guangzhou when we went after our podcast in Vietnam. But basically, the weather was shit, and we couldn't do anything.
And Guangzhou's shit.
And we were just traipsing around Guangzhou like a bunch of fannies, like complaining about it. Dean was like wholeheartedly standing up for Guangzhou, being like its number one employee on the tourist board. Don't worry, guys. Guangzhou has a lot to offer on a sunny day.
Like,
Yeah,
look,
it was quite funny.
You guys forget the milk.
Yeah.
And you forget the hot guy that cooked us our noodles.
Was not hot.
He was hot, and he was definitely.
And also,
one of
we
us.
got to the airport, and there was no heating on.
Yeah, there's no heating in Guangzhou because it was
Yeah.
summer and it was spring.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Spring in January. That's not a thing in China. I don't care where you live. I don't care where you're from. I don't care where you live. Spring does not happen in January.
Consensus, Guangzhou is shit. End of podcast.
Sorry. I think, going back to what we were talking about, the best things that we've done, and we've talked about like travelling and doing all these cool things and seeing all these really amazing, beautiful landscapes and monuments, and I really think teaching's been one of the best things that I've done. It's really humbled me. I feel like it's really made me so much more like self-aware and so much more aware of other people. I feel like I've really become so much more confident more patient. Well, maybe not more patient. Not this week anyway. I think it's been such a rewarding experience, and it's been so challenging and so difficult, but it's something that I've really seen a big like improvement in. I feel like I've really achieved something, especially this year with my classes. I was doing the like speaking test with my kids today, and they're like grade 1, and when they came to school in September, they didn't know anything. They couldn't say hello, they couldn't say how are you, they couldn't say like my name is. And today I was asking them questions from the book, like what can you see? I can see trees, and they know how to like make words into plurals, and they know how to say the elephant is under the tree. They know how to say all of this, and I felt so proud, and I've never felt that way about like maybe anything I've done except my degree. And even then, seeing like
Pales in comparison, right?
seeing these kids grow and like grow up and achieve has been so rewarding. It's really so nice.
Yeah, this experience has convinced me to do the teaching qualification back home.
Yeah.
It's convinced me that I want to segue through secondary teaching and maybe onto uni level teaching. You know, education certainly. I mean, it has been this experience. It's helped concentrate my mind into what track I want to do, spend a career back home and the rest of my life doing. Because it has been such an awesome and awe-inspiring experience to where we make such an impact on inspiring, inquiring minds.
Like I said at the start when we were talking about what we're going on to do next, I said that I'm probably done with being a teacher for the moment, but that by no means minimises how much I've enjoyed it and how important it has been to me and to like hopefully to the students and to my colleagues. And I'm going to steal this line from Ruth, who's said it many times in the last few weeks. All people should be made to teach for a period of their life, because it like makes you think in a different way. It makes you deal with people in a different way. It makes you listen, and it makes you understand.
Here.
I'm not going to try and add anything to this. I think when, especially probably through most of the podcast here anyway, we've had one or two disagreements. But I think it's very fair to say that when one of us speaks, it's a message from all of us. So there's nothing really I can add. Teaching has been the best experience that I've had. I want to do it again here in China. I want to go home and I want to get qualified so that I can do it anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, we've made some of the best friends that we'll ever make. Okay, since I am the only person that will be staying in Wuhan for the next year, for the podcast, I'm not 100% sure what we're going to be doing. If I find some people that are willing to do it, then I'll more than happily start it again. But I think at the start of the year, we were extremely up for it. But it's actually quite a lot of a commitment. It's actually quite a big commitment. And especially when you've got all your classes, it's very hard to find the time to not only record the podcast, but editing normally takes quite a while as well. So I will keep everybody posted on our social media. So where can they find us?
You can get us on Facebook. Just search for Wuhan Weekly Pod in the search bar and like our page.
You can find us on Twitter at Wuhan Weekly Pod.
You can email us at wuhanweeklypod@gmail.com.
And you can also leave us a review on iTunes, which would be really nice if you could review us for one last time.
Okay, that's the last podcast from all four of us. So I'd like to say thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully you will hear our collective voices together in your ears at some point. Right. See you later, guys. Bye.
That was sweet.